Joining me now is Mark Lane, managing editor for the Texans Wire for USA Today. Mark, thanks for being with us. Start by telling me what that play is behind you on the whiteboard there.
So this is actually a play that the 1992 Dallas Cowboys ran with Emmitt Smith. So you got Emmitt right here getting the ball, and then Daryl Johnston's lead blocking for him. And then you got the Great Wall of Dallas here opening it up. So
I give you props for still being creative in this year 2, going into 3, going into 10 of this pandemic with your home setup. Thanks for being with us. A lot to talk about, obviously, with Houston. Let's start with Lovie Smith. What do you make of this hiring?
I think that this is a guy that will be able to bridge the gap to, in other words, complete the rebuild. With David Culley in 2021, everything was a mess. You didn't know what was going on with Deshaun Watson. And then that ballooned into his lawsuits with the sexual assault allegations. And it just it was a huge mess. But now that Houston has got through it, people will notice not one question was asked about Deshaun Watson. In fact, they asked about Davis Mills, the rookie quarterback who was a third rounder from Stanford. There was discussion. There was no mention of Jack Easterby, who's the executive vice president of football operations, who was so much a part of the drama, maybe not himself, but in terms of a target throughout 2021, no mention of him. In fact, I only found in the online database of, we get Associated Press and Getty Images and USA Today Images, there was only one picture of Jack Easterby. So everybody's moved on from all of that, and now it's starting to become more about football. And when you compare Smith's press conference to Culley's last season, Smith just had more command. He was a man with a plan. He defined the 4 phases that Houston would win, the 4th being the fans. He acknowledged, Lovie Smith, that the fans deserve a better product on the field and that they want to win the fans' trust back. And it really sounded like he had a plan to complete the rebuild for the Texans. And we'll see if that pans out, because if you go back to his most recent NFL job with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he went 8-24 over that span. They were 2-14 in 14, and then 6-10 with the rookie Jameis Winston in 2015. And the defense didn't exactly perform to expectations. And with the Tampa 2 scheme that Smith runs, when you look at it deployed in other places, there's a question as to whether that scheme is just becoming irrelevant in today's NFL. So that was something that was hinted at in the press conference with general manager Nick Caserio, was that Smith was, even though he's old school and he's set in his ways, he's willing to listen. And that is kind of what we saw down the stretch in the final 5 games when Smith was the defensive coordinator. Was he was open to using different sub packages and different coverages, not just sticking completely to his Tampa 2 defense. So again, he has a plan, and the fans are excited, even though 24 hours before they were saying, Lovie Smith, I can't believe it. They spent a month just to find Lovie Smith, but he's really got that calm, measured East Texas approach. And I think that that's what the fans are looking for. And now you've got to go through the entire offseason, and then you tell me who's playing on Sunday, and then I'll tell you how the Texans will do.
I do want to get into the rebuilding, approach from Lovie, and also how you think he might be a fit. But, you mentioned fans saying like, well, where did this coaching hire come from? And the big storyline nationally ties it back to Brian Flores. What's the discussion in Houston about whether this was a quick affirmative action hiring in the wake of that lawsuit?
Well, they'll tell you that it wasn't, but I think even more so than the Brian Flores lawsuit, they really like Josh McCown, the backup quarterback who, for Houston in 20, NFL quarterback, going back to 02, but he had no coaching experience at all. And they were going to hire him instead of Brian Flores, who came off of leading Miami to 2 consecutive winning seasons, the likes of which they had not done since 02-03, which was the back end of the Jimmy Johnson, Dave Wannstedt era. That's really where the whole crux was. And I think that they went with Lovie because he embodies a solution to the problem that faces the NFL with the things that Brian Flores' lawsuit brings up. Because take, for example, Lovie Smith. He got his start on Tony Dungy's staff, and that was really something that Tony Dungy did with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in the late 90s, was he gave guys opportunities, whether it was Herm Edwards, whether it was a Lovie Smith, later, whether it was a Mike Tomlin. He was giving black coaches a chance. And that's what Lovie Smith talked about as well, is that's what he sought out to do throughout his career, is first try to recruit players into coaching and then get them introduced at the quality control level, and then just allow them to do a good job where they're at, give them a platform to show that they are capable and that they can, that they have a lot to offer as a coach, and then just let it go from there. Basically create a pipeline. And I think that's what Smith's going to do in Houston, is he's given an opportunity to Pep Hamilton to be the offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback's coach last year, and really he's been kind of a quarterback's coach in the NFL. And you may see more of that in terms of Smith giving black coaches sort of the, entry-level jobs, but that from there they can take it, up to the coordinator level and start to catch attention. And so I think that that's also why they hired Smith, is that he's proven that he can do that.
That's an interesting point that you make, because I think Lovie is now tasked with walking a really delicate line, right? I mean, a lot of people, when Brian Flores decided to sue the NFL, said, well, that's basically the last nail in the coffin when it comes to coaching opportunities. And when Lovie made his first remarks as head coach in Houston, a lot of people felt like, well, he's not demonstrative enough in terms of speaking out about this problem and, the way that he was hired. So are you essentially saying that, the way that he can walk this really narrow line of not doing anything that would upset the apple cart with NFL ownership while also trying to affect change is to basically create a pipeline and create opportunity? So it's not exactly, what he's saying, but it's actually going to be what he's going to do that's going to determine his legacy in terms of helping to solve what's a glaring problem with diversity.
Well, to me, throughout Smith's career, he's tried to find solutions to the problem. Because, again, coming from the Tony Dungy coaching tree, if there's a problem with black coaches not getting a chance, then let's get them in at the ground level and they can work their way up. And that's what you're seeing with the Texans staff as it is right now. You've got Pep Hamilton. He's the offensive coordinator. You've even got Lovie Smith's son, Miles Smith, but nevertheless another black coach on the inside level, and now he's getting a chance to work his way up. And you've got other jobs on the staff that need to be filled. You need an offensive line coach, as James Cameron left and went to Carolina. You needed a quarterbacks coach if you don't want to double up Pep Hamilton. So there's going to be opportunities to bring in guys and allow them the chance, because that was something that Lovie said is no matter where you are, you're always auditioning for a job. And that's what he wants to do, is let these guys have the chance to audition for bigger and better jobs. And then that's how you put more black coaches and minorities in front of coaches and general managers and owners to consider during the hiring cycles.
What does the future hold for Deshaun Watson? Kind of paint a picture of what Houston does in this situation. Where are some landing spots for him?
I think that one landing spot would be Carolina, because they're quarterback needy and it's close to home for him. They also have some draft capital to do it. Another place would be the New York Giants. They've got plenty of draft capital to try to pull it off. Miami is where Deshaun Watson would want to go, albeit they seem to be committed to Tua Tagovailoa. And this is kind of crazy, but you have to consider with Kyler Murray being upset in Arizona, would Houston consider swapping quarterbacks at that point? And those are places where they could send Watson. Arizona, I'm just playing around with that, but those are teams that would be looking for Watson. But really the problem is the sexual assault allegations and how serious they are, and the resolution that has to come from that in order for anyone to make a trade for Watson. And that's what Houston is working with. Watson, I believe, is not set to be deposed by the lawyer, Tony Busby, who represents the 22 women in the civil suits. He's not set to be deposed until after the Super Bowl. So this thing might find resolution by the draft. And if it drags on beyond that, then it would affect the Texans' return. But I think that effectively the Texans have moved on from Watson, even though he does count as a significant chunk of their salary cap.
The Giants have said that they are going to try to go with Daniel Jones. Does it reach the point where Deshaun Watson, assuming he's whatever happens with the deposition, will end up getting to go where he wants to go? I mean, is Miami a place where Tua Tagovailoa has shown flashes, but they could bolster their roster? I mean, the league doesn't have a great track record in the past, Mark, when it comes to how do I put it? Staying away from guys who have been disgraced relating to women's issues. Like, as soon as there's such a separation there, that as soon as the legal issues are fixed, if a team needs a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, you fully anticipate them to make a play to get him?
Yes, I do, because of what you talked about. And also, to me, I think the Deshaun Watson situation tracks with, interestingly, someone that Deshaun Watson grew up admiring, and that was Michael Vick. Michael Vick had the dogfighting ring thing back in 2007, and then he went to prison, and he was out 07, 08, and then the Philadelphia Eagles gave him a chance in 09, and he was really the third quarterback, Wildcat quarterback. And then the Eagles weathered that media storm. And then by 2010, when Vic was back competing with Kevin Cobb for a starting job throughout the 2010 season, all of those problems kind of went away. And I think that's somewhat what the media does as well, is at some point the media drops the story too, even if it is something that can't really be ignored. At some point, the media does just let it go.
Yeah, we're seeing that in Washington right now with so many of the women that have allegations against Dan Snyder fighting to keep that story in the news cycle. How many, just quickly before we move on from Deshaun, how many good years do you think he has left at quarterback should he find a team after all of his legal issues are solved?
I think that he has maybe 3 to 5 years. And I say that because he sat out a year. So when he comes back, how's he going to be able to take the pounding of a season? Is that going to affect his availability? Will he, have the type of injury that knocks him out for a year? He already had the ACL injury in his rookie year. So I think that, because this takes something out of you in terms of sitting out a year in just getting out of the rigors of football, I think that he has 3 to 5 good years remaining.
Just lastly for you, Mark, you mentioned what Lovie's tasked with and that the Texans are in something of rebuilding mode. Paint a picture for us of where he starts. I mean, I know you joked, tell me who's starting and I'll tell you how good they're going to be. But, what are the issues that this team is immediately facing heading into next season?
What they have to do is they have to find a pass rush. And whether that is saying Jonathan Grenard's our guy who led the team with 8 sacks last season, the most since 2019 when Whitney Merciless did it with 7.5. They've got to shore up the back end, whether that is drafting Notre Dame's Kyle Hamilton at number 3 overall. They have to have an offensive line, at least the cohesion that can protect Davis Mills and open up running lanes. They also have to get away from something that crept in, I would say during Bill O'Brien, but I think organizationally it happened with Arian Foster when they got lucky with an undrafted free agent running back who, just exploded and was a Pro Bowler and won the league rushing title, compared to Ben Tate, who they took in 2011, in 2010, second-round pick, and he didn't exactly pan out. So they've gone with veteran running backs since then. They can't do that. They have got to use one of their top 100 picks on a running back this season. The linebacker, I think if they sign Kamu Grugier-Hill back, that will help. He led the team in tackles last year. Garrett Wallow is entering his second season, and he's a type of linebacker that is quick and has sideline to sideline ability. But it's really more about just developing that cohesion, because they have a new coach now. According to the NFL rules, they can start off-season workouts April 8th. If they can get guys, and the players, if you go by Instagram, they loved it when they promoted Smith to head coach. But if you can get the players to buy in, to show up to off-season workouts, not do their own thing where they live, which they can do because they are voluntary, but if you can get guys to show up and develop that cohesion and that brotherhood, then that should help fill in the gaps. But this is the real first off season for general manager Nick Caserio in terms of being able to actually address the team's needs through the draft. So they've got to build a competitive, cohesive roster. And I think they also need to say Davis Mills is our guy and just build it and just build around him. Don't, goof around and give first team reps to some veteran backup you sign. Let him beat him out in camp if you have to. But the first team reps have got to go to Davis Mills. And name him your guy. Don't stunt his development.
Plenty to do for Lovie Smith right away. Mark Lane, thanks so much for taking the time on Sportsnaut. We appreciate it.
All right, Carolyn, thank you.